So today we're going to talk about why we homeschool year-round and what that even looks like. So if you're just joining us for the first time, this is Hope and Homeschool. I'm Lindsay, and we're a newer channel, so if you haven't already, feel free to subscribe or consider subscribing. We're going to be having lots of conversations about different homeschool styles, strategies, curriculums, schedules, planning, mom life, parenting, all of that. So yeah, consider subscribing if you haven't already. But today we're having a conversation about why we homeschool year-round. So we've been homeschooling for about 3 years now. We have 3 kids. We have a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 4-month-old. And we have homeschooled year-round basically the entire time. Why we decided to homeschool year-round was, first of all, just for convenience. We like to travel. That's actually one of the reasons why we started homeschooling. I'm gonna do an entire video about why we homeschool. I talked about it on a Facebook Live the other day about that. I'm gonna do it on YouTube because you can edit YouTube videos, and I want you to hear my heart in that video. And yeah, when you can edit, you have a little bit more control over how it's portrayed. So we like to travel, and we travel year-round, and we travel during the traditional school year a lot. And so we wanted to have some flexibility in our schedule. So one of the reasons why we homeschool year-round is because we needed to be able to take breaks randomly throughout the year. So for us, we start new grades, if you will, in June. So for example, right now we have a 2nd grader. We started her 2nd grade coursework in June. And the reason why we start in June is just because when we originally decided to homeschool, we started in June. That's the only reason why we start in June. Some people start their new coursework in August. You know, just depends on you and your family. So some people, when you talk about homeschooling year-round, they think, that sounds awful. And a lot of people follow just the traditional school year. They start in August or September and go through May or June. But to me, when we first started, I actually thought that the traditional calendar of homeschool sounded awful, because a lot of states have a requirement of how many hours per week or how many hours during the school year you actually have to be doing school. Now, there is some flexibility in that, because with homeschooling, you can consider a lot of different things school. You know, teaching your kids how to cook is technically school. Going on a nature walk outside is technically school. And so you have some flexibility in that, but the thought of starting school at like 9 a.m. and going until 3 p.m. every single day sounded absolutely awful to me. And so my original thought is that if we're schooling year-round, I only have to do school for a few hours every single day, and I'm still gonna get the number of hours that I need in an entire school year. We don't homeschool every single day of the week. Sometimes we will homeschool, 3 or 4 days a week, and then we'll maybe start at like 9 o'clock in the morning and go until about noon. So we are not doing an all-day school schedule, and we're not doing it every single day of the week. My husband and I both have side businesses that we work and side projects that we are working on. So homeschooling is not the only thing that I do. I have a business. I have, now I have this YouTube channel. I have other things going on. And so I need to have time to do those other things. And that was part of the reason why we decided to homeschool, is because we wanted to have flexibility and a little bit more control over our schedules. An average homeschool day for us looks like we get up, we do our morning routines, which I'm going to talk about what are our morning routines in another video. So if you want to stick around and watch that, you can. But we do our morning routines. Then we start school about 9 or 10 o'clock, just depending on the day when we get our morning routines done. And then we will do schoolwork until about noon. We'll take a break for lunch. And then if we have anything yet to do that day, we'll do school for about, another half an hour to an hour, but then we're done. And then the rest of the day, we're doing our afternoon routines. I might have an hour or two of work to do for my business or another project that we might be working on at the time, or maybe I need to record a YouTube video or a Facebook Live or something. and we work on those projects before we start getting dinner ready. What I like about homeschooling year-round is that we can kind of space things out a little bit better, so it doesn't feel like we're cramming a bunch of stuff in all at once. So for example, we do classical conversations. It's like a homeschool group that follows the classical education model, but that follows the traditional school year. We start going to that in August, and then it usually finishes up around Thanksgiving. Then we start again in January, finishes up at the end of April. And so we try our best to stay on task with that and to stay caught up with that. But sometimes we do get behind because maybe we're traveling, we're gone for a week. And so what we will do is when it's break time, so let's say Thanksgiving comes around and we're maybe like a couple of weeks behind on classical conversations, we can pause everything else. We can pause our other coursework like our math and our reading and stuff like that and just focus on getting caught up with CC. And then another thing that I like about that is we don't do classical conversations or CC. We don't do that in the summertime. And so all summer long, all we have to focus on is math and reading and those things that are not a part of classical conversations or things that we need to work on separately from classical conversations. We can work on that all summer long. So it's not that we're constantly doing math and reading and classical conversations and history and all of these things that we're trying to cram in every single day. We can space it out. So we might have a week where we don't do any math because we're focusing on a different subject. Or we might have weeks where we don't do any classical conversations because we're focusing on different subjects. Now you might also be wondering, like, how do you plan that out then because you're not following the traditional school year? So what I do every single year is this is kind of like my homeschool planner. It's just one of those at-a-glance calendars. So you can actually get these to where they don't follow the January to December. You can get them July through June. And that's what I get. I get a new one every single summer, and I kind of try to plan out, okay, what are we gonna do for curriculum? I know that we're gonna have CC at certain times of the year, but then we'll plan out other curriculum, and I will write it all out in my planner. Now, do we always follow this 100% to a T? No, we have to make adjustments, but what I love about homeschooling year-round is that you can make adjustments. You can take a week off here and there, and it doesn't totally blow your entire curriculum. So then what I do is I take the outline that I have for our curriculum, and then I add it to my daily control journal. This is our Anderson Family Control Journal. I love this thing. I'm gonna do a whole separate video on that. Yeah. I love my control journal. Some people think it's weird that we homeschool year-round. We originally started with Sabbath schooling where you do 6 weeks of school and then you take a week off, but it didn't always work with our travel schedules, so now we just do school year-round. We always work it into our schedule whenever we're home, and then when we travel, we take a break. Sometimes we even do school while we are traveling, just depending on where we're going. Like if it's camping or something, then you can school while you're camping, although we normally don't. But if you're on a road trip or something, you can listen to your classical conversations while you're on the trip, or a kid can do some math when they're sitting there in their car seat. A lot of people think homeschooling year-round sounds weird or it would be really hard, but I actually think it's actually a lot easier than trying to cram everything in. So that's why we do that. Now some people like the idea of having the entire summer off, so they would rather cram everything into a school year, but I like to have just scheduled breaks throughout the year. We take a big chunk we take several weeks off for Christmas. We take a week off here and there. And sometimes when you're homeschooling, you just need a break. You just need, a week to maybe get your house in order, or a week of not trying to, especially if you have like a subject or something that your kid's struggling in, or you're just, butting heads or something in a certain area. Sometimes it's best to just be able to take a break. And if you have that flexibility because you're homeschooling year-round, you can take a week off without it being a big detriment to your entire schedule. So that's why we homeschool year-round. That's how we homeschool year-round. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'd be happy to answer any questions that I didn't answer in this video. And yeah, and in the upcoming videos, we're gonna talk more about how we schedule out our homeschool year. We're going to talk about the control journal, how I take our homeschool schedule and plug it into our control journal every day. And we'll talk about curriculums, different things like that. So if you haven't already, feel free to subscribe. We are a newer channel, so we'd love it if you decided to hang around and hang out with us. And if you thought this video was valuable, hit that like button, and we'll talk to you soon.